everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be looking at Chad in Amsterdam by Chad Bilyeu and a variety of amazing cartoonists. I don't know where he's hooking up with all of these people, but I really like Chad's taste in cartoonists. So this is, I don't want to call it an autobiography comic or a diary comic because it is both of those things, but neither. Like, really, this is the precedent for this is American Splendor, and I know that fits into autobiography, but I've always thought Harvey Pekar did it in a way where, yeah, it was, except for like Our Cancer Year, which is very much about him, his thing always seemed to be more about everybody around him and the city around him and like observations on life, and I always felt that's what makes Harvey Pekar's work so worthwhile to read to me, is there's always like these insights or a flavor or something that he's getting. And Chad has managed to do that exact same thing where I really don't feel like I'm reading autobiography. I don't feel like someone's just telling me about their life. I just feel like they're the avatar for me to experience things or encounter like little funny stories. And in this case, Chaz being an outsider, someone who is from Cleveland, and he acknowledges that in the back, his how he's indebted to Harvey Pekar for the series. And it even, I believe he said he met him at one point, that he was a really nice guy. He grew up in the same neighborhood in Cleveland Heights and stuff. He's really taken that same spirit and applied it to being the outsider, whereas Harvey Pekar is kind of the insider in Cleveland and shows that view. Chad is the outsider. He's the other in Amsterdam. He's an American living in Amsterdam. And so it's really a book about Amsterdam more than it is about Chad Bilyeu, and just his experiences in Amsterdam, but it's a flavor of the city and of the people and stuff. And so I really, really like that. And then it's just bolstered by the amazing cartoonists he works with, and the people that he gets to do the cover are all great. So it's very, very much like in American Splendor, where you just have a little, very, very short story, and they always have some kind of like punchline or wisdom or something at the end of them, which works really well. And then on the back of every issue, there's some historical information about famous buildings in Amsterdam or in the Dutch culture. This is a story of Sinterklaas and the evolution of that character. And this Black Pete character, I forget what the Dutch pronunciation is. So there's like always these kind of interesting historical, well-researched information in certain stories and on the back covers that I really like. This first one here is by a cartoonist, Jared Boggess, I really like his work. Wasn't able to find much else by him. The Breaks by Chad and the cartoonist Boyane, who's got a really, really great, like, kind of rough punk rock style, and the stories are always really geared towards the artist. It seems like this is a story about them being in the red light district, and it feels as nasty as the red light district is. I spent 5 days in Amsterdam once, not so much as a tourist, but like just hanging out with a friend who was living there, and we did some of the tourist stuff, but mostly just wandered around. And my experience of the red light district was just nasty, and it smelled like piss everywhere. It was gross, and this art just feels like that to me. And this is like, they run into Curtis Blow, which is fun. Like, I can't imagine living in Amsterdam and just running into Curtis Blow. And there's the photo here, so this is all true stuff. That photo there is in the back of the book. So just, I don't know, interesting, wild experiences. That's the other thing. If you're gonna do autobio, like, at least go live a life and have an interesting experience. I feel like Chad and Harvey Pekar can get away with it because they function as just the writer. So they go live a life and, have actual stories to tell. And then the cartoonists who are like locked up in their rooms drawing all day, that we're the people who shouldn't be doing autobio because that's all we have to write about. So that helps a lot too. This artist here is Dennis Golaka. Really like this art. Again, this looked like someone who just did murals, doesn't normally do comics, or not murals, sorry, that was another artist, but someone who just does fine art stuff. EKS Graphics does a few stories for him, and I really like this art style as well. It's kind of like a old school Brian Michael Bendis, like when he was doing his own art. Really like the cover on this one. This same artist, Lara Ryazannikova. I'm gonna totally mess that up. Does a story in another one. This artist Eric Y was in Megala, working in a more superhero style, but really love Eric Y's cartooning style. This one's funny. It's about his bike got basically arrested and put in lockup. His bike got towed, and I love this scene here where he's having to travel to the bike junkyard with this awesome public art sculpture there. And it just shows like how inconvenient public transportation is compared to a bike, like just how long this whole sequence takes and how many stops and train to tram to bus to, like even being on a boat to get across the canal or water or whatever. That's really funny. I also really like that he's willing to write an accent, that he's not just like, glossing over the fact that people have accents. I feel like that's gone out of style, like dialect and accent being represented, and I like it. It gives a flavor of the place. So that's good. This one here, this is another EKS graphics. I really like that style. And this is a conversation just between a hooker and some guys that are in, because Chad lives in the red light district apparently. So I can't imagine like the hilarious scenarios. Probably just do books full of these that he's seen with tourists getting their dick sucked and stuff. This right here is really fun way to do autobio information. It's like the old Marvel, like stat. It's got his stats and what his powers are and what his origin is and other aliases and all that kind of stuff. So like those old Marvel stats books that they release. It's just like kind of consistently inventive and clever. Consistently got cool different artists in here. This one's art by Droll. Good conversations. Like, right, and this is, good writing will have sentences that you can latch onto. Right here he says, I don't know, it'd be nice to be considered as an individual as opposed to always being an American. Ain't nobody trying to be categorized or fetishized all the time. And I like that because, I feel sympathetic to that. I'm an individualist, and I don't like when people are always being forced to identify by these external categories. We should be talking to Chad. We should be interviewing him. And I just look forward to talking to him about a lot of these different kinds of things. His experience of Amsterdam versus my short experience there. This is art by Gary Dumm. You can see some more very good art. He's actually having people speak in Dutch and then having the translations there, which is cool. It's again that sense of like flavor of a place. Here's one by Bernard Maralt, BEM. This is a fun story about him picking up chicks. And then again, just like fun writing. He's talking about he preferred to smoke bud, not beer, because the bud makes me wiser. Just fun, flirty stuff like that. Here's the artist Lorenzo Milito. This is the guy that mostly just does murals as far as I can tell, but is an awesome cartoonist. Love to see more. It's really fun to see this like warped curvilinear, 4-point curvilinear perspective, but with a cartooning style. So just quality all throughout. The print quality is amazing, like perfect handling of the reproduction. Here's a story by Juliette David, who's with Chad on his other book, The Re-Up. There's a story here about him going to a stripper that actually has a really funny, he's like interrogating her about how she gets tips, and I don't want to give it away, but there's a fun ending to that one. This is the other story by Lyra Ryazannikova. I don't know, but really great job. And really, for someone who doesn't like reading a lot of dense text in the comics, at first I was like, oh shit, but the really interesting observations about the times that he spent in these three major cities, Washington, D.C., his hometown of Cleveland, and then Amsterdam, and the flavor of them, and observations about how people consider the question, where are you from? being different in different places. Like in Cleveland, it means like what part of town are you from? In DC, obviously, that's going to be from much more all over. And Amsterdam has some international flavor to it as well. So just those kind of interesting things where you look at this and you're like, oh my God, a boatload of exposition. But he's actually telling you something interesting and worth knowing, unlike a lot of these diary comics where they just tell you about their sandwich or whatever. Here's a phone call home that he made, which is a bit more diary comic, but within this, the characters actually have like things worth saying that are interesting. They're interesting conversations. So, he's talking about like being able to talk without the fear of repercussion, and like how over in Amsterdam, he feels like people are more rude because there's less likely to be a fight breakout. I've always thought that was something that our society needed to put back. Like when I worked in retail for a long time, I was in a position where at the time I was really healthy. I had been doing mixed martial arts, so I felt like a strong, healthy person who could do okay in a fight if I had to. And you know, I had just graduated my MFA in art. You know, I have a master's degree now, but I'd be treated like a total idiot by like old ladies because I was working in retail, and they knew I couldn't do anything because I would get fired. So they'd just be extraordinarily rude in a way that they would never do that to like a physically healthy young man if they weren't hidden behind society in that way. You know, like I'd lose my job and get fired and arrested. And I've always thought that we need to somehow, we put society to make sure that might doesn't make right, but might now makes right in just a different sense with like laws and policies and bullshit that people can hide behind. So I like the idea that in America, actually, maybe we do still have this like, don't talk shit because you might get hit. You know, I feel like there needs to be a bit of that in society to keep people on the level. Anyways, you know, it's just always making me think about things, and his writing is good in that way. This whole issue here is devoted to his irritation, his justified irritation with this character. Let me try and get the name of this blackface character. I don't know. It translates to Black Pete. Zwarte Pete. Zwarte Pete. I guess this is part of their Christmas celebration where it's like somebody in black, very obvious blackface, and the answer that he gets of this character's not in blackface. He just went down the chimney with Santa and came out covered in soot, but not his clothes, just his skin. So Chad's obviously irritated by this and spins the whole issue kind of looking at it from different ways, talking about actual situations like this. He has a photograph of this guy in the back who is in a wheelchair but still gone out of his way to get in blackface. Again, really cool cartooning here by Leigh Schaefer. Here's another one. I don't know who the cartoonist on this one is. But like the kid just pointing at him and being like, hey, it's Black Pete. Even though he's being told that Black Pete doesn't represent black people. Here's some more Eric Y cartoon. I really like Eric Y's stuff. I can't find him on Instagram, though. I'd like to see more. And then this is the latest issue, issue 6. So the first one is illustrated by Dan Meth. And just a really good, funny conversation here where he tells a story about meeting a kind of famous 80s person. And then right here you have going into another story, but they're immediately talking about the first opening line is, so you're telling me the story you just told was fabricated. And that's interesting because it's a different story, but it seems to also suggest that, like, did you fabricate this one? You know, that he's got such interesting stories that people don't believe him. And that's what makes us good. He's lived kind of a wild life, moved around a lot, experienced lots of things. And that means he actually has something worth saying. This story is about a coffee shop that Brad Pitt went to, a coffee shop. And then this story here was probably my favorite one because this is Chad learning that in the Netherlands you can get time off of work for burnout. And he's like, well, what the hell is that? And they're like, well, you know, you're like tired. You're just exhausted. Like life's gotten to you. And so you need some personal time. And he's just cracking up like, Like, are you out of your mind? Like, you know, growing up in Cleveland and America, like Midwest, like blue collar work ethic, especially being a black dude from Cleveland, like just the idea of persisting through bullshit is just such a part of his character, that this idea of people just getting like some time off, you know, and he's like, we already get like 6 weeks a year for vacation, and you have one of the best work life ratios of any country, da da da. And we still get time off for burnout. This is insanity. And then he just is like, okay, fuck it, like I got the burnout, and keeps calling in, and they send him to a therapist to confirm it. Um, and then he actually like breaks down his life for her, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe you do have a reason to be burnout. Like, that's for real. But just that idea that, like, yeah, in the Netherlands, when I was there, the impression that I got is everyone was just super happy, and like everyone's riding a bike everywhere, and you can do anything you want. Like, any stupid idea you have seems to be encouraged in Amsterdam. Like, I saw this is something I want to ask Chad about if we get to talk to him, is I saw a homeless soccer league that was like being professionally filmed by TV people, and had like professional banners printed out and all stuff. It's not like crazy idea of professional homeless soccer league, but that just seemed to be Amsterdam. Whatever stupid ass idea you have, someone goes, yeah, that's a great idea. Go do that. Go try that. And everyone seemed very happy for it. And that kind of sense of Amsterdam, the very limited taste I got of it, really shows up in these books, and I really get a even better taste of the city through Chad's eyes. And I think being an outsider to somewhere is probably always the best way to see it. I just really respond positively to the idea of the traveler. Like, I've moved around a lot. I lived in Berlin for a couple months. That's when I spent some time in Amsterdam while I was living in Berlin. Like, just what that does to you as a person, how that enriches you as an individual. I think Chad has captured that really well in these books. When I was living in Berlin, I got more of the sense of like, being a resident in a city, like how that feet on the ground day to day really is a much richer, better experience than just being, 5 days in Amsterdam as a tourist. So I feel like I'm getting to live vicariously, because when I was in Amsterdam, I definitely said like, this city is tight, and I would live here. So I'm getting to live there a little bit vicariously through Chad, and I appreciate this. So I really believe in all of Chad's work. I believe in everything he's doing. Like I said, we're talking about doing an interview, so hopefully that will go up right after this. And hopefully maybe I can get to contribute to one of these, Chad. That would be awesome. I really believe in what Chad's doing with all of his work. The Re-Up, the Megillah anthology that he does, and Chad in Amsterdam, they're all great projects, all kind of different. And so please support Chad's work. I would like to continue to be able to purchase it. And if you enjoy what we're doing on the channel and you want to support us, the two best ways to do that are Patreon. We have a few different tiers that you can subscribe to with different perks on them. That's always appreciated. It helps us buy the books that we review, things like that. And then the best thing that you can help with the overall mission of just making better comics is purchase the books that Sean has coming out through Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some of those that are available. Sala Niyalo, Path of the Shades by Clarence Doss is a really cool ongoing project that Living the Line will be producing. Clarence is a PhD student from Fiji who's studying the myths of Fiji for his doctoral thesis. And part of that study project is that he's producing these comics. They're kind of like Hellboy, where there's these little short stories that capture all of these different mythologies. But then he's using that to wrap the project into his doctoral thesis, and then provide educational material where people can come to these comics. They don't have to read his PhD thesis. They can come to the comics and get a more consumable version of the mythology of Fiji. Issue number 3 of The Abolition of Man is part 2 of the sci-fi social satire story that I started in issue 2 of The Abolition of Man. Sean has picked up the writing reins for issue 3 and taken my story and expanded upon it and given it an ending. We're asking, this is still all entirely illustrated by the Midjourney AI. We're just asking it to work in the pen and ink style that we were using for issue 2. It's one of the funniest, scariest, most interesting looking comics that you'll get in a long while. So definitely check this out, and if you haven't, make sure you get all the issues 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 when they come out as well. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.